Okay, welcome to Torah, Observant, and Polygamy. All right, so one thing that I have been told is that, the patriarchs did it, so it must be okay because Yahweh didn't ever come out and say, black and white, it's not okay. However, these same people know that the Torah, is also the law, is also instructions. So part of the Torah is there to instruct us. Okay, so keeping that in mind, I'd like to read just a little bit about Abraham and Sarah. Now, Yahweh had promised Abraham an heir, a child, and Sarah can't figure out why it's not happening in her timing. And since it's not happening in her timing, she decides, oh, we need to do something about it. We evidently need to help Yahweh out. This will get us in trouble every time we try to help Yahweh out. We have to understand that he is not a microwave Elohim. He takes his time about doing stuff, in part because he is outside of time. Okay, so Genesis chapter 16, verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abraham, Behold, now Yahuwah hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid, and it may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. Okay, so she's trying to help Yahweh out, and she sends Hagar to Abraham to be his second wife. And she conceives. Is this a good thing? This is not a good thing. This is not a good situation. In verse 5. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom, and when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Yahweh judge between me and thee. But Abraham said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face. So Sarah is super jealous. She is not digging this situation that she put herself in. And it's funny, but she says, Yahweh judge between you and me on this matter. Because, I think she's trying to say, you should have known better. You should have known this was not going to work out. So Abram clearly felt bad, and this is later his name is changed to Abraham and Sarai to Sarah. Abram is feeling really bad about it. So what's he do? He tells her, okay, you take her and do what you want with her. So she dealt hardly with her. My guess is she probably beat her. And maybe something even inside her wanted her to lose the child she had conceived. I'm not sure. But I think it's very interesting what you see, what Yahweh says, because Yahweh is in agreement with me on this kind of a situation. So in verse 7, and the angel of Yahuwah found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou? And whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of Sarai. And the angel of Yahuwah said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of Yahuwah said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, and that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And in verse 11, and the angel of Yahuwah said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahuwah hath heard thy affliction. Yahuwah considered what she had just gone through an affliction. He didn't consider the second wife thing a super great deal. He considered it affliction. Affliction. All right, so what does that mean? It can be a cause of persistent great suffering. The state of an affliction. So if you are doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, would be afflicted? Would you have persistent pain or distress? Let's approach us with these topics, men. Affliction. Persistent pain. Persistent pain and distress will make you emotional. I have heard women stand up for polygamy and say that it's okay. These women that stand up for polygamy and say that it's all right and that it has some benefits, generally speaking, are part of a polygamous relationship when they speak of it. I haven't ever seen a woman who's outside of a polygamous relationship say that it's a good thing. But inside the polygamous relationship, you're going to get a dynamic where the women are always trying to outdo each other to win the love of the man. Just like in the story of Leah and Rachel. Now, Leah and Rachel, yeah. And Jacob. So Jacob did have more than one wife, but it wasn't because he chose it. Much like Abraham, it was pushed upon him. Now, later in life, Abraham did take a second wife after the death of Sarai. But I don't believe it says that that second wife was during Sarai. I think he learned his lesson that it's not a good situation and didn't do it again until later in life. But in the case of Leah and Rachel, who were sisters, Leah was constantly trying to figure out ways to win the affection and love and attention of Jacob because Jacob loved Rachel. And so she would prepare mandrakes. Well, there's a great amount of work in preparing mandrakes. And this is something that she would do, and then he would go in unto her. And I really can't say shame on Jacob because I don't believe we were ever made or created to love more than one. The same kind of situation is spoke about in the New Testament, that you can't serve two masters, for you'll love the one and hate the other. Well, your women aren't your masters by any matter of means. But it's the same kind of situation. There will always be one that you will be more partial to. And if you think you can keep that from the other one, then you're mistaken. And because she is not your number one, it will hurt her. And it will vex her. Another practical story I would like to tell you is when my sister was, I think, probably around 50 years old, I went to visit her one day with my children, and when we walked into her house, the television was really loud, really, really loud. And I loved my sister. I do love my sister, and I'm like, well, why do you have your TV on so loud? And she basically would use her TV like a burglar system. She said that the lock was busted on her front door, and so she would keep her television up loud so that people would always think that they were awake. If they had come up to the house close enough, they would automatically think that she was awake, which, is a little, it's probably true, but it seems a little crazy not to fix the lock on your front door. To me, I'd be like, get me some tools and put a new lock on there, But anyway, then while we're eating dinner, the heater is on. I can feel the heater on, but my sister wants the window open a good 4 inches. All right. I'm like, Kim, why you got the heater on and the window's open? I mean, it's 32 degrees outside. You're costing yourself money. And she says to me, well, all the years that I was married, I could never have fresh air in the house. So now, I don't have a husband to answer to, and so I can have fresh air in the house. All right, so again, if you have 2 women in a house, you're going to have headbutting, because I wouldn't want the window open with the heater on. That doesn't make sense. Well, actually, in my house, I have to do that. I have to do that because my house is ancient, and we have Dearborn heaters, which eat up the oxygen in the house. So we don't leave them open all the time, but we do have to have some open here and there, so that we have oxygen to breathe and we don't, die from lack of oxygen. But that was not the case in the forced air heater in my sister's house. So all of these things, when you marry, you know that the first couple years of the marriage, there is extreme headbutting between the wife and the husband because of these same kinds of situations. I know that with one of my husbands, the last one that was extremely unfaithful to me, he did not like the way we washed our dishes. So my children I had a couple that were teenagers while we were married, and then a younger girl. And I put soap on my scrubby sponge, and I scrubbed the rim of the glass, and I put it in the dishwasher. Well, he didn't like that. He thought that it was toxic and harmful, and he didn't want the dishes done that way. To which I responded, if you don't like the way that I do dishes, then you can do the dishes. For I made the food, and you didn't, so go do the dishes yourself then. These kinds of things come up in a marriages all the time, where you hit walls with each other, and each of you have to give some. But if you bring a third person into it, then 2 of the people can bully the one odd man out and cause that person's life to be a living hell. I mean, just the whole bullying part of this scenario would be atrocious for the one. And no doubt, whichever one that the man loved more, the opposite one is going to be put through the ringer. All right, so there was one other scripture I wanted to show that I don't have pulled up. Just a sec. All right, so I would just like to ask, how can you look at this scripture and think maybe it might be all right to have 2 wives? So let's read what Yeshua said in Matthew 5:27 through 31. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So if you are in a marital relationship and you are seeking that second wife, wouldn't you be looking at her with lust and committing adultery? According to Yeshua right here sure sounds like that would be the case. Sure does. And let's just carry on. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And just in case you were thinking that Yahweh was saying, cut that woman off and get her away from you because you're not happy with her, let's see what he says. Furthermore, it has been said, whosoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that divorces his wife for any reason except for sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery. So, in another place, Yeshua said that, Moses said you could give her a certificate of divorce, but I'm not really for it. I find this hard to reconcile the what Yeshua says here, because there's no way for you to actually date somebody or court somebody without having lustful thoughts. I think that is a complete and total impossibility. So that I would think that it wouldn't fly. That's what it sounds like to me. Anyway, for today, I think that's all. Oh, no, I remember. There was another story I wanted to, a short story I wanted to read in Judges, because a brother in Yahuwah was talking to me about different patriarchs who had multiple wives. And one of them that he brought up was Gideon. Well, Gideon had another name, which was Jerubbaal. Okay? So, he had no less than 30 wives and a bunch of kids. So I just want to read this little short section, just to say that the stories that I've read where there are multiple wives, many people are unhappy. Many people are unhappy. And I think if you are living with two wives that are constantly competing for each other, with each other for your affection and your love, that's going to create friction and drama in your house beyond belief. And drama and friction in your house, while it might sound really cool to have a couple of women fighting over your affection and your love, it might be fun for a couple of weeks. It might make you feel like all puffed up and like, ooh, I'm the stuff. But after that, it's going to be a thorn in your side. It's going to just be painful to come home, because there's no way to fix the situation. In fact, you might start looking for a third woman outside of those two women and outside of your homes, because they are so miserable. And because they're miserable, you're going to be miserable. Anyway, let's read this little short story here about Gideon. And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you, either that all the sons of Gideon, which are 60 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. And his mother's brethren spoke of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem, all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech. For they said, He is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-berith, wherewith Abimelech hired vain and light persons, which followed him. And he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, Gideon, being 70 persons, upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, Gideon, was left. For he hid himself. And all the men of Shechem gathered together in all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. So I say to you, gentlemen, if you had, I think it said 40, right? 70, 40 children. But one of your children wanted to reign and said, should not there just be one that reigns and not 40? And he goes out and kills all the rest of your children. Would it not cause you pain? I would think it would be so far beyond excruciating, you wouldn't be able to stand. And if you were in the situation of Abram and Sarai, you would have hated it that Haggai, did I say her name right? Hagar, there it is. You would have hated it that Hagar got a beating and ran away. You would have felt sick if you cared about people whatsoever at all and weren't a monster. You would feel sick. You'd hate it. And eventually, Sarai can't handle being around Hagar at all, and they both get sent away. Both Hagar and her son. These situations never end up good. For the men have to send away people that they do care about, even if they're not their number one love. And the children hate each other. In the case of, and let's just be real. What about Joseph? His father loved his mother the best, and she only bore 2 children, but there was a whole bunch from Leah, right? And what happens? The children from Leah are not loved as much as the children from Rachel. And because they are not loved as much, they are resentful as all get out towards their brother Joseph. And what do? They throw him in a pit and then sell him. And who gets hurt the most in this scenario? Jacob himself. And though he didn't pick, it wasn't his choice to have all these wives. Though it was thrust upon him, it still was a horrible situation. So I would just like to ask you to think about these things before you get into multiple women, marriages, multiple spouses, because I don't think you're going to be happy. I think there is a brain in your body as a man, and you need to think with the one at the top of your shoulders. You need to think with that brain, because the other part of your anatomy that you might be thinking with is flawed. We're not supposed to just go after our flesh and fulfill our fleshly desires. So I hope that you will consider these things. And I'm asking as a woman, but I am also asking as your friend, because these situations will only cause you pain and heartache in the long run. So that is what Yahweh laid on my heart. I don't know if he'll lay more on and me do another part, but for now, that's what he's spoken to me about. I pray y'all have a blessed day in Yahuwah and his son,